President Joe Biden has invoked the Defense Production Act to boost vaccine production and distribution. But will greedy pharmaceutical companies, will they get in the way? Brigida Santos joins me now to discuss that. Brigida, my call on this is absolutely the drug companies will get in the way no matter what Biden tries to do. He's on the right track here, too. We've done 3 stories tonight. All of them, he's on the right track. He's on the right track here. But the problem is, do we have these drug companies that are going to get in his way? What's your take?
Yeah, of course. Look, there's no direct mention of vaccine patents in the executive order that was signed by President Biden. Now, the Defense Production Act helps the federal government secure supplies to curb the spread of COVID-19, which would include things like protective gear, medical equipment, and, of course, vaccines. Now, when it comes to the latter, the government could invoke the government patent use law to use pharmaceutical companies' intellectual property without permission, as long as those companies are paid reasonably. Now, the U.S. government agencies have already given the vaccine maker Moderna $2.5 billion to develop its successful mRNA COVID-19 vaccine. The government has also helped fund AstraZeneca's vaccine. And while Pfizer claims it hasn't accepted any money from the federal government to develop its coronavirus treatment, Public Citizen reports that Pfizer is using a spike protein technology that was developed by the U.S. government. Now, this matters because Pfizer has overcharged American taxpayers for the 200 million doses of its treatment that were purchased by the U.S. government. So these patent issues are getting in the way.
Out of every company you've just mentioned, Pfizer is the one that scares the bejesus out of me, only because I've been to trial with them so many times. I know how their corporate, I know how it works at Pfizer. It's all about profits. You pointed out taxpayers paid for the basic part of the Pfizer program, even though they say, we didn't take any money from taxpayers. That's ridiculous. At least the other companies will own up to the fact, yes, we've taken money. I think where we're probably, this is a guess, my guess is Moderna will show some leadership here, I hope. Have any pharmaceutical companies agreed to waive vaccine patents during the pandemic at this point?
Yeah, Moderna, Pfizer, and AstraZeneca have vowed not to enforce their patent rights during the pandemic, but they and their manufacturers are not sharing information with other production houses about how to actually make these vaccines. That is the real problem. On paper, it looks like they're not waging an intellectual property fight, but behind the scenes, they're keeping their methods secret so that competing manufacturers can't develop generic vaccines based on their own. Now, these vaccines aren't exactly easy to make. While Moderna and Pfizer's mRNA vaccines are a little bit easier to manufacture than AstraZeneca's, it still requires highly specialized manufacturers. So the World Health Organization has only approved 43 companies to manufacture vaccines. And even with the Defense Production Act expanding that, it's still going to take a very long time to produce enough vaccines to curb the virus, especially if these pharmaceutical companies and their manufacturers are refusing to share information about how to actually make these treatments.
This is a big test for Biden. This is a huge test for Biden. He knows he can do something about the patent issue by just basically looks like an executive order. He knows he can do something. The question is, will he do it? I'm hoping he will, because if we see that side of Biden, it's just going to be a glorious 4 years. So how are vaccine patents preventing poor countries from accessing COVID-19 treatments? They're doing it on purpose, it appears to me.
Well, vaccine patents are basically creating artificial scarcity on a global scale and leaving poor people in those poor countries to die. A coalition of 100 countries led by diplomats from South Africa and India are now calling on the World Trade Organization to waive patents related to COVID-19 during the pandemic, specifically so poor countries can make their own generic vaccines. But unfortunately, the United States, led by President Biden, and the EU have pushed back against the proposal, and a majority of the world basically arguing that patents and the profits they generate are the key to innovation. Public health advocates have also called on wealthy countries to donate or sell vaccines to poor countries.
It's early still, Brigida. I'm holding out hope that Biden will push through this hold that the drug industry has on every bit of Washington, D.C. I'm really holding out for that. We're going to do this story on a regular basis to see if he caves in. I'm hoping he doesn't. Thank you for joining me, okay?
Anytime, Mike.